Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Today on the podcast, we are back in Florida with a runner that I met in Pennsylvania, one of the first people I met when I was 14 years old who was faster than me on the track at my high school. Today, welcome on the podcast, All-American Pennsylvania runner and longtime coach, Steve Littleton. Hi, Steve.
Hi, good to see you.
Steve, let's tell everybody your origin story as a competitive athlete. How did you get involved in competitive sports?
In high school, my junior year, the gym class ran the cross-country course. I happened to run rather quickly, very close to the record of the high school. So bingo, I got contacted by the cross-country coach saying, "Hey, why don't you come out?" I went out for cross-country my senior year.
What year was that? And what high school were you in?
My senior year was at Ridley High School in Folsom, Pennsylvania. Before I went out for the team, I'm in the cafeteria at lunchtime. This kid comes up to me, says, "Steve, I went to cross country camp along with 4 other guys that are going out this year. If you don't make the varsity team, you can't run," because seniors back then could not run JV. I said, basically, okay, if I don't make the team, I'll quit. First time trial, I was second. We had a guy named Charlie Personi, who's still a very good friend of mine. Charlie was a very good runner. He was a very hard worker. He did a lot of hard running, a lot of distance. When I went out for the team, I figured he's probably the right guy to hook up with and train with. On days that we didn't have formal practices, or if the coach sent us out on a 5-mile run, I would try to hook up with Charlie. And truthfully, it was painful for a while because I didn't train over the summer. I came in out of running shape, but Charlie and I bonded. And after the first meet, I was second man behind Charlie. And when we came to the district meet, I actually surpassed Charlie. We both qualified for the state meet my senior year. I finished one place out of all state.
X plus one.
But no, the coach didn't tell me, "Hey, if you push this a little harder, you can make all state," because I cruised it in. Then indoor track season came, and out of nowhere, I just started running really fast times. My first meet, I was in the slow heat of the mile and I ran 5:01. But that got me into the fast heat the next week. And I started running in the 4:30s, pretty much winning. And there was just one gentleman, Eric Beam. Eric Beam was a phenomenal runner. He stood about 6'3" and was as skinny as a toothpick. But boy, did he have leg speed. It ended up becoming, in Delaware County, the duel was between Eric and I in 99% of the meets. And he beat me most of the time because he could outkick me. Eric went on to run a 4:09 mile his senior year. It was interesting because we talked to Eric when it's time to declare what race you wanted to run at the state meet. Since he was running the mile, I decided to run the 2-mile. As it turned out, I won the 2-mile, he won the mile, and that's what got us really started.
That's cool. Let's talk about that whole period. You had 1 year of high school, 3 seasons. What was it like in terms of facilities? Cinder track? Did you get shoes right away in cross country? What was your coach's knowledge looking back? How much did he know about training you guys properly?
I'll start with the coach, Carl Schnellenbach. He was an assistant football coach. He was the head wrestling coach. So the mentality was, get out there, damn it, and push hard, or else he would call you names. I'm not kidding. You'd be running around the track, you go, "Littleton, you pussy, what are you doing? You're Littleton." So, but he overtrained. Everybody would call the track the endless road. And some of the workouts were just overwhelming. And I was a guy that didn't need to train a whole hell of a lot. What ended up happening was by 3/4 of the way through the season, I started breaking down. I was winning pretty consistently the mile, the half, and the 2 mile. Back then, you couldn't run the 2 mile in any other meet. So I think I ended up running like 3 total 2 miles in my high school career. So it was usually the mile, half, and 2 mile relay. That whipped me into great 2 mile shape, no doubt about it. But a week before the regional meet, which would qualify you for states, I didn't come to practice for 3 days because my legs were just killing me. The day of the regional meet, I pull up on my 350 Honda. I get off, I go into the locker room, and he grabs me by the scruff of the neck and says, "Where the hell have you been?" And so I looked at him and said, "Coach, I needed some time off." He goes, "You know what? Get out. Just get out. Get back on your motorcycle and get the hell out of here." I grab my bag. I walk out. I get on the motorcycle. I start it. And then I feel someone grab the back of my neck again. And he looks at me and says, "Get the hell in the locker room and don't say anything. Just get in there." So I go back in the locker room. We get on the bus. He's pissed. He isn't saying a word to me. We get to the meet. And of course, the 2 mile is the last event. So I'm warming up. I get on the track. I just felt like dogging it for a while. So I'm dead last in the 2 mile through the mile. We're strung out. So I'm about probably 180 yards out of the lead. And the coach is on the sideline. He's banging his clipboard on the fence and he's screaming at the top of his lungs, "Littleton, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing?" He's banging it. And so I said, "Okay, probably time to get moving." So I go to the second lane and I take off and pick up the pace. And I come to my buddy Charlie Sony, who's in the same race with me, and he's running about fourth. And I said, "Charlie, come on, come with me. It's time to go." And he just gives me this crazy look like, "What?"
Already going.
So I go to the lead. I ended up winning by probably 100 yards or more. And I'm off the track. Coach comes up and says, "That's better." I'm in the stands and this guy comes up and starts talking to my coach. My coach goes, "Hey, Steve, they're going to have an invitational in Bristol, New Jersey." He said, "This guy wants to know if you want to come and run the 2 mile. We're 2 weeks outside of the state meet." He went, "Yeah, sure, I'll go." But we get to the Bristol meet, and my time at the regional meet was 9:29. I'm at the Bristol meet. The gun goes off, and there was a guy there that was pretty good. He takes off and gets the lead on me. And the bottom line is I finished second, about 4 seconds behind him. I realized something right then and there, and that was a very valuable lesson. Can't let the leader get away. I got to stay on the leader. So I ended up taking 3 more seconds off my time. By the way, each time I ran the 2 mile, the break in my personal record. So now I'm down to 9:26. So the next meet, we go to the state meet.
You were in class
A.
triple A, yeah. It was
Yeah.
already AA then. Okay.
A runner named Mel Boyd from Ringgold in Pittsburgh. He was coming back. The previous year, he was second.
Yeah.
So he
I
was
remember the
favored.
picture of him on the podium with his head like this, like, what the? He wasn't happy. Yeah.
The race sets off. I decided not to get too far from the leader, having learned that lesson from Bristol. So I sat in about third place. Mel Boyd was leading, and there was another guy, I don't remember his name, he was second. And so after about 4 laps, it was a 2-man race.
Or Jeff Foster, maybe.
No,
Jeff Foster.
Foster was the next year. So it was a 2-man race after lap 4. And I don't know what possessed me, but when lap 6 came up, I took off. And I knew it was only lap 6, but I felt so good. I just wanted to see, having been burned in my kicks from Eric Beam, I didn't want to get burned again. So I threw in a pretty good 6th, 7th lap. And then it came down to the 8th lap. I led for the last 2 laps and ended up finishing first in 9:21. So that was my introduction to running. my first year.
Well, what about the equipment? You were running on grass and what were the cross country courses like?
Most of them were asphalt there. There were a couple courses that had a mixture of grass and asphalt, but only the invitationals were all grass. It's interesting because I didn't know what kind of shoes to buy. I bought a pair of Puma low-cut basketball shoes, the blue suede with the gray stripe. 'Cause they're
They look
heavy,
nice. Yeah, they look nice. They're not so good in the rain either, but I'm not sure.
but they were heavy. So I got a picture indoors. I ran a 427 mile. I had my Puma sneakers on, and the newspaper company sent me an 8x10 glossy of that one. So I didn't understand what to wear. I eventually ended up getting a pair of Puma spikes for track because we were on cinders. When you got up to the regional meet, it was all weather surface,
And States was at Penn State then, right?
and states were at Penn State. Yeah.
At that point, nutrition, you're just eating whatever you ate, right?
Second thought. Yeah. I never even thought about nutrition.
That's a pretty good coverage of your 1 year in high school. So let's just start with what kind of student were you academically?
Made the dean's list a couple times. I was basically a B student, couple
Eh,
A's here and there.
You were thinking of going to college before you started your senior year. Is that right?
No, I really didn't know what I was going to do. My stepfather graduated clean through the sixth grade. Okay. And his mentality was get a damn job. In fact, we had almost a physical fight my senior year in high school because he insisted that I get a job. And I got invited to the championship meet that was held in Philadelphia. A college team, Swarthmore College, their coach invited me to run on their team. It was a 10,000 meter event, and I'd never done anything close to that racing. But I ended up finishing ninth in that race and with the dry heaves because I had pushed myself pretty hard to pick up the ninth place finish. I knew in my heart that had a chance of going to college and maybe getting a running scholarship. That crossed my mind. You can't tell your stepdad that because you don't know, right? After school, I would pretend to go around to different places and put in applications for jobs. So I'd walk around for a couple hours, go home. Oh, yeah, I put applications here and here. Meanwhile, I had done none of that. Eventually, he got off that you have to get a job thing. Although he owned a delicatessen out on the waterfront, and it basically was a trailer that you would walk through, get your drinks. He had grill, sandwiches, coffee, all that. And he made me work there. I wasn't able to go to some of the early indoor track meets because I'm working Saturdays for him. So he moves to Delaware to start a new business, a gas station business and a deli. So no one's guarding me working Saturdays, right? Other than I got to get in there because it's going to expect a payroll back. I hire my buddy down the street. So I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I pick him up. I drive him into Philadelphia, 27, 28 miles away. I help him get set up. I get back in the car. I get back to the high school. I get on the bus to go to the indoor meets. And then as soon as the meet's over, I'm home. I get back in the car, drive into Philadelphia, pick him up, help him close up. And I did that for 5 weeks so that I could get through the indoor season.
That's great. And your stepdad didn't know, huh?
No, he never found out.
That's great. All right. When did college become a definite? Was there recruiting? Were you looking at colleges? Were they looking at you?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about even beginning to look at colleges. One day, my high school counselor calls me up from class and says, "Hey, the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown coach called me and he's interested. So he wanted to know your grades. Is it okay to send him your grades?" I said, "Oh, yeah, sure." I got lots of letters, right? IUP would send me a letter, but no one ever contacted me. So the only coach to pick up the phone and talk to me was Tom Kelly from UPJ. I did get a call later on from Gettysburg College coach, but he never even talked about scholarships or never even invited me to college. He just chatted. As it turns out, Tom Kelly drives down to my house, takes my family out to dinner.
That's a 5-hour drive,
Exactly.
at least.
Takes my family out to dinner and then brings a video of the UPJ campus and the cross country course, which was in the woods. It was great. It was a great course. My stepfather, rather blunt man, after Mr. Kelly goes through the spiel, my stepdad looks him in the eye and says, "So let's get something clear. I'm not paying one dime for him to go to college." And I'm sitting there going, holy
Great. Yeah.
And my stepfather was abusive. He was very abusive. So you didn't open your mouth. You just stayed quiet. So I'm gauging Mr. Kelly's response to that comment. And he stays calm and says, "Mr. Littleton, can I get some financial information from you? Because we might be able to do some financial aid for Steve." And my father was very tight about that kind of stuff, right? I don't think he was really truthful to the IRS for many, many years because he owned his own business. So
Yeah.
he could dictate how much profits he really made. So I don't know anything about that. And that's that. Bottom line is, Mr. Kelly says, "Mr. Littleton, if Steve's willing to come, is that okay? Is that okay?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, if he wants to go, he can go." So Mr. Kelly looks at me and says, "Would you be interested?" Well, I didn't say this. You're the only option I
Yeah.
have right
Where else am I going to go? Yeah.
to get the hell out of this house and away from my stepfather. So I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'd like to come."
You ever been across the state? Had you ever been to Johnstown?
I had never been to Johnstown. No.
That turns out to work out. What was your summer then in terms of training? What did Coach Kelly talk to you about for summer?
Actually, he didn't. He just said, "If you try to get some running in, distance mainly, don't worry about intervals, but just try to get a base in." One of the guys he recruited from Central Bucks West was Pete Patterson. And Pete was a pretty good half miler, I think about 152. He's a really good cross country runner. I decided, well, hey, Pete and I are probably going to be the top two runners based on what I understand. So I called Pete and said, "Hey, how'd you like to go down to shore this summer with me and we can do some training?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, that'd be great." So I pick him up, we go down the shore, and we start running. Pete had been training, and he's just kicking my butt, and he's doing it on purpose. He's running like 6:10 pace for the distance, right? I'm like 7-minute guy, casual conversation, just looking to get some miles in. He just beat the crap out of me for 2 weeks. We ended up getting into UPJ, and he's in really tip-top shape. UPJ never really had a good cross-country team at that point. The prior year, their number one guy was a basketball player who was 6'3", about 225. He was the number one guy, okay? So cross-country wasn't a big deal at UPJ. So now we've got Pete, myself, and all these other guys we recruited, and we're winning dual meets after dual meet, and we're getting a lot of press. So the thing that drove me nuts with Pete Patterson, every time we get an interview, Pete would take over. "I'm Pete Patterson. I'm number one. This is Steve Littleton. He's number two." And at first that didn't bother me. But after about the 10th, 12th time, that started to grate on me. And so I know the coach overheard me once saying, "Yes, I'm Pete Patterson. I'm number one. And this is Steve Littleton. He's number two." And the coach looks me in the eye and he says, "You don't have to be number two." And I realized I really wasn't putting it all out there. I was just biding my time, slowly getting into shape and waiting for the right time. So the time came, I was running side by side with Pete in the dual meet. I had never run side by side with Pete in the dual meet, and Pete was starting to panic. So we're about the 3-mile mark of a 5-mile course, and he's giving me this look like, why are you still here? At the 3.5-mile mark, I can see his eyes are getting big. Now he's starting to breathe hard and he's starting to panic. And all of a sudden, he starts waving his arms and he falls into the bush on the side of the course. And I
You
don't,
killed him.
and I'm like, what the hell? I hear the coach. I came around the bend, the coach is there. He's, don't worry about Pete. You're the leader. You got to win this. Pete and I never competed again in cross country.
Whoa.
Yeah. I ended up going home over Christmas break. I was playing tackle football, which I probably shouldn't have been, and it got clipped and it really messed my knee up. So I was out for about 2.5 months. I missed that entire freshman indoor season. Pete was doing great. Then when I start coming back, Pete started not racing anymore. Oh, no, I don't feel good. Blah, blah. He never ran against me again.
Hmm.
And then the next year he transferred to main campus.
Wow.
So that was an interesting story.
Yeah.
So I just stayed the number one guy for the next 4 years.
All right, let's talk about what that was like in a small college. Division two, I think.
Correct.
It was starting then NAIA school
Yep.
in a small town. Who did you run into 1974, 75? Who were the runners, your competition that you did encounter that were quality runners?
From other schools?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if I can remember some names. West Virginia had a guy named Alex.
Basic?
Yeah, he kicked my butt. I didn't beat him until I was a senior, and he had already graduated. We were in at Shenley Park for the TAC 10K championship, and I beat him. But he was really good. I ran across the Edinburgh guys, of course.
Yeah. And a lot of
Foley.
I've interviewed a whole bunch of them from Foley and Foster and Muggleton and yeah.
When we did run, I never beat all of them in the same meet. Different guy. I'd usually place second. So one day Foley would beat me. The next time we ran, Foster might beat me or Henry. Yeah. Not until we got to nationals. And then when we got to nationals, I was able to beat them.
This was across from my high school. UPJ
Yes.
campus was right across, and I had just moved into the school district in ninth grade, and we had a crap track. And then I think between my ninth and 10th grade year, they put down a first
Rubber.
generation rubber track. So we
Yes,
had
we
a
did.
good track. And all I remember, I met you, and I'm a sophomore. I remember a couple conversations where I said to you, okay, Steve, next time we have a meet, why don't you just run in lane 6 and pace me so I can break the school record? Because I'm running the same thing as you. 2-mile relay, mile about 12 minutes later, so I'm dead. I can never break the school record. I'm not that good a runner to start with. And you're like, no, I can't do that. It'd be illegal. I was like, you're trading here over. But what use did you have of that track? Cross country was in the woods across the thing. Do you remember using that track, Richland High School track for training?
Every day. When track season came, we trained on that track every day.
And yeah, you didn't help me out there, Steve.
I asked the coach, I said, Coach, can I do that? He goes, no, you can't do that. That's illegal. Because I'd have been happy to do it.
Let's talk about your runs at nationals. There's a famous picture in one of the races where Kim Foley came up top of the hill with the African runner and it made track and field news. And I think you're in that picture, but you're back around 8th or 9th or 10th in that photo. What was your first experience of getting to a national meet from UPJ?
It was my junior year. It was Division II. It was out in California, Newport.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, was overwhelmed. IUP was there. They had a team there. And that start it kind of blew my mind. I'd never been anything quite like that. I think I ended up finishing like 45th or so. And I was very unhappy with that performance. but it was educational because I had now experienced a national race and I knew you got to get out. You can't sit back and wait because these guys are too good. You're not going to catch them.
Who went? Yeah, was this before you had to qualify? Did they just send you? Did they send your team?
No, you had to qualify, and myself and one other runner qualified from UPJ.
All right, so you go back disappointed. Do you remember Coach Kelly's reaction to your performance?
Coach Kelly was a great guy. He would never say anything negative. If he didn't have anything great to say, he wouldn't say anything. You finished the race and he said, "Did you learn anything?" That was his first question. I looked at him and said, "I learned a lot, but I learned it too late in the race." He was really good at building up your ego. He was the assistant director of admissions. In between classes at UPJ, I'd stop in his office and he'd pull out files. And I remember he pulled out the Edinburgh team and he goes, "Look, Foley's running 5:02 per mile. This guy's running 5:04 per mile." They were loaded. They had a tremendous team. And he looks at me and says, "You can run with these guys." He's trying to convince me of that, right? He wasn't real successful in getting me to that point that early, but we ended up going that year to Penn State, and they had their TAC meet on their golf course, and I ended up averaging 5:02 per mile on that course. I didn't know it because I think at that point in time, I didn't even pay attention to my times. So we rolled into classes back at UPJ and track season's getting ready to kick up. And Mr. Kelly, we're in a classroom and he's writing out everybody's best mile time for cross country. And it's 5:02 for me. And I'm like, "What? 5:02? Where did I do?" And he goes, "Yep." And he put where you did it. So I did it over 10,000 meters, which really boosted my morale and ego and convinced me he's right. I can do this. I
All
can.
right. So this is now your junior year. What happened in that track season?
Oh, let's go back to my sophomore track season because the big story was I qualified for the mile and I qualified for the 3 mile. So I ended up running 4:08 in the mile my sophomore year, which, by the way, my previous best was 4:19. And I was in the race with Mike Boyd, right? So I got a picture of the starting line. I'm standing next to Mike Boyd. He's towering over me and he's been over and he's looking at my shoes. I had the black Adidas racers with the fluorescent orange stripe. They were suede. I remember them because they were like, "Oh, these are awesome." He's wearing these old, white, almost cardboard like spikes, probably the cheapest spike you can find. And he looks at me and we're on the starting line. He says, "Trade." Oh, this foot, he had a size 11 foot. I'm a 9. I just looked at him. The gun goes off and I got out and I came through the quarter in 58. I'd never gone through a first quarter in 58 in my life. And I'm coming through the half in 159. And I'm sitting right with Boyd and I'm in like third place. The 3 of us broke away. And I'm thinking to myself, "Holy hell, this is uncharted territory. I don't know." Third lap, Boyd slows it down. So naturally, the 2 of us behind him slow it down. I'm like, "I don't want to slow it down, but I'm not passing the Olympian. I'm not doing it." I'm too intimidated. He slowed it down to 68. And
Wow.
then we hit the last quarter. He's gone. He's running like a 51. I can't run a 51. I come back with another 60 flat and I'm 4:08. I thought to myself, if anybody would have pushed that third lap, I could go because I was completely relaxed. I wasn't in oxygen debt. I think I had maybe like a 4:04 in me that day. Every time I think back to that race, I kick myself in the butt because I should have had it. But now you're a sophomore, right? You're wet behind the ears.
Yeah. Was Bill Scholl? New Jersey guy in that race, do you remember?
Don't remember.
But he told me about that race and Boyd disappearing. And he
So
was
the
about,
so the 3 mile comes up, right? And I'm feeling good. Hey man, I got leg speed now. For a 3 miler, I got some decent leg speed. I'm in the front pack. We're going around. I'm sitting in like fourth place early in the race, slowly moving up. We got about 2 laps to go. And now I'm ready to start moving into the front position. So I'm passing this guy. He reaches out and he grabs my tank top strap and he starts pulling me back. I didn't know. I gave him an elbow to the jaw. He falls at the foot of the official who raises a red flag. I don't see it.
man.
I go on. I win this freaking race and I win it big. I ran my last lap in just under 60 seconds. I win it. I'm thinking, yeah. But I wore spikes and it was an asphalt track in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. I peeled off the bottom layer of skin off my foot. I had it bad. So they're rushing me into the room. The coach has rushed me in to take care of me because my foot's bleeding. And the loudspeaker comes on. It says, the UPJ coach, please report. And he's, what the hell? So he leaves me in the training room, the treatment room, and he goes out and he's gone for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. He comes back and he says, they disqualified you. We had witnesses that came up and said he grabbed you and wouldn't let you pass him. He goes, his father happens to be president of the NAIA, and this was an NAIA meet. So I would have been, in my mind, national champion my sophomore year. Instead, I'm in the room getting my feet treated. Huge disappointment.
I can cut this out or not. Who was it?
His last name was Taylor, Steve Taylor. And I swore if I ever caught up with him in another race, I was going to beat the living crap out of him. But I never encountered him again.
Okay. So that's sophomore year. And then you had your experience on the national cross country meet, which kind of threw you with the mass start. And then how'd that go in the following spring?
I qualified for nationals. In fact, at that point, we became a Division II school and an NAIA school. I didn't have a great junior year. I ran okay, but not sensational. I didn't run really well until my senior year after that.
Then did Coach Kelly leave the school, leave coaching? What happened? I don't think he was there your senior year.
And that was part of the problem. He took a promotion, went to the Greensburg campus of the University of Pittsburgh at Greensburg. And so they hired a coach, and I'm not going to even tell you this. He knew nothing about running. So we cut out for practice. He brought out 8 tires, put them on a hill, and said, we're doing tire work. So
That's not in the linear book, I don't think. Yeah.
I pulled him aside and said, Coach, that's great football training, but that's not, we won't get better. We'll get worse if we don't do the right workouts. I just recommended some workouts for him. But the problem was he didn't care, right? He really didn't give a crap. So we're going to meets. He's driving the school van and he's got a bottle of Thunderbird 2020 between his legs. And I'm not kidding.
Keep us winding. Yeah.
Okay. So some of the guys on our team were boozers. So they're like, hey, coach, we could use some stuff too. On the way back from the meet, he'd stop and buy beer for everybody in the band. Okay. So as that's going on, we're now stopping for beer on the way to the meets. Okay. Now, I'm not drinking beer on the way to the meet. I'll have a beer on the way home after the race. Consequently, our team went to shit. We didn't do crap. And so I didn't really excel much under his cross-country guidance. I still won races, but it was because I was smart enough to do the right training by that point in time. I tell him, Coach, today we need to do mile intervals. Oh, okay, we're going to do mile intervals. All right. Coach, today we need to do hands. And he pretty much listened. So then they hired Larry. What's his last? He was the gateway coach for track, and he came in and he knew his stuff. He said to me, "You're going to be my first All-American." And that panned out. I ended up being his first All-American. And he was a very good coach, good training. And I got better under his guidance.
Your roommate, your senior year, was my buddy, Jim Lambert, who had a great career in high school, a great year. I was ahead of him our junior year. I got a state medal, and that motivated him. He went to summer camp, ran a lot of things, and finished second to state. And never Edinburgh talked to him, but he wanted to go engineering. So he was drawn to UPJ for the academic program. He was an engineer from birth, always making go-karts, everything else. And he was your roommate, and he certainly, like me, looked up to you as a running mentor and idol. What do you remember about his experience? Because he just said things didn't work out for him. We were in touch a little bit, and he said, "Good for you." He said, "Just not working out for me." And he eventually lost interest, but he was a good athlete.
He was.
How how do you remember that year with Jim as your roommate?
Jim was a great guy. I really enjoyed him as a roommate. But I'm going to tell you, it was the Nittany Lion Invitational. And it was a very cold day, very windy, which was pretty typical at State College in April. So we're going to host our distance medley relay. We had a good quarter miler who could run 49 to 50. And our half miler was Jim Fallon. And Jim Fallon just wasn't a very good half miler. He was a great guy. I loved running with him, but he would run 202, 201. He never broke two. Poor lamb chops, Lambert. He gets the baton next to last. He would have been last, but our quarter miler passed somebody, right? Lambert brings us up from that point. He's doing the 1200 leg, 3/4 mile leg. He moves us up into 7. So I'm pumped. Hands off to me. I take off. And so I'm using the wind strategically, right? The backstretch is a headwind. So I'm taking off hard to catch the next guy ahead of me. I'm drafting him down the backstretch. As soon as I'm out of the wind, I'm pushing to the next guy. I move up into second with a lap to go. And the coach and the rest of the team, "Stay there." And I'm like, "I'm not staying here because I have it. I know I've got it. I'm not going to wait and see if this guy can outkick me." So going into the win, I take the freaking lead, but I'm hammering. I'm giving it everything I got. I come around, we won, but it never would have happened without Lambert. Because he not got me into that position, there's no way we came back that far. I ran a 4:19 that day, by the way, in that wind and cold.
What did you study at UPJ?
I was a political science major and I minored in German.
Yeah, I will cut this out if I need to. Jim, when I saw him that year, 76, 77, he told me about shenanigans uh, out and about in the social life, and you and your using of German, and sometimes pretending it was your first language.
Yeah, I pulled a few pranks, especially picking up chicks.
Yeah, okay, okay, we can leave that in then. I was gonna say it, but yeah, he just thought that was he thought that was hilarious, and he enjoyed that. But he was disappointed with the change in coaching. The same thing that he decided to go UPJ. Malone he thought about going to the Air Force Academy. He talked to Kelly a lot, and so when Kelly disappeared, he was like, "Well, that's not what we talked." What were you thinking about in terms of running at the end of as your senior year was coming to an end? What did you think would go forward in you? Had you taken any money then? Was there money going around under the table? Nothing yet?
No, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I thought I might like to go get a master's degree. I spent my summers down in the lower part of Delaware, Rehoboth Beach, Bethany Beach area. And I was working through the summer and trying to figure out where I was going to go next. I was thinking maybe the military, but then I got this card in the mail from Pitt, main campus, for a degree in not criminology, but let's see, what was it called? Jeez, can you remember the title of it? Great. Anyway, it was an expanded capability of criminology. It was a 48 credit program with a mandatory master's. And I didn't realize, wow, that's like a whole lot more than other schools, right? I put an application in and I got a return mail and they said, yeah, you're accepted. And I thought, I don't have any money. So I called my grandmother and said, hey, grandma, can you lend me like $2,500 and I'm applying for a student loan and I'll pay you back as soon as I get it. She was nice enough to do that because my stepdad was a gambler. And so we never really had anything. He was a chronic gambler with the horses and he lost way more than he won. So anyway, I get
That's how gambling works. So, yeah.
So I get in my car and I drive out to Pittsburgh, not knowing where I'm going to stay, just clueless, right? I did have a friend though that was there. His family was there, and I could have stayed with them if that became an issue. I'm looking on the bulletin boards for a place to stay. I find a place with three other roommates. I did that for a semester. Then I realized I went through $2,500 in a semester. Yikes, right? Because you got to pay rent, you got to eat, you got to pay your tuition, all of that. I'm like, I got to make a change. They were advertising though that they had some teaching assistant positions. So I said, I put my filed for one, and then I packed up everything to move home because I thought what I'll do is I'll see if those credits transfer into Temple. I can take the train in from my house, go to school, take the train back, and it's only a 30 credit program. So I could probably get through that pretty. I'm home over Christmas break and the phone rings and it's Pitt. And they go, Steve, congratulations. You're going to get a position here at Pitt. Do you accept it? I said, can you give me some details? Yeah, you get a monthly stipend of, I think, $490 and your tuition's free. I'm like, I'm in. I'm in. About repacking everything back into my car and driving back and happened to look on a bulletin board. And I said, hey, I know him, Tim Burke. And another guy I forget the other guy's name from IUP, but he was also listed. We're looking for a roommate. I contact them and they go, Littleton, get here, come on. Now I got people to train with. And that was my beginning of running for Allegheny Nike at the time. Neil Cohen, who was the athletic director at Allegheny Community College, he hosted that. And so I started running for Allegheny Nike as I was going through grad school.
Anybody from the Northeast will probably recognize your teammates' names. Who were some of the people
Malcolm
that were
East.
there? Yeah.
Malcolm East was the top guy. Let's see. Tim Burke was on it. Joe Warden. And we had a couple of former guys that went to Allegheny Community College.
Rodich.
Yeah, Rodich showed up later, though. The year after I left, Rodich showed up. But we had a really solid team. We probably had 5-6 guys under 15 minutes for 5K. It was solid team.
You had all the equipment you wanted from Nike, right?
Yeah, that was the good part about it. We got uniforms, we got running shoes, and sometimes assistance to meets that we had to travel on. So that was a nice deal.
How far did you go with Allegheny? With Allegheny Nike, how far away was it traveling for the meets? Most
of them were just local. 90% of them were just local meets. But we would go to the Boilermaker race up in New York, Akron. We go to the Akron meet. So not real far. Yeah. car distance traveling.
Was Sam Bear involved when you were there?
Yeah, Sam Bear at the time was the coach for the college team. He didn't really do anything with us. He would train with us once in a while, right? But he had coaching duties there. So we didn't see Sam. I saw him a lot because I ended up getting a job as the director of safety and security at Allegheny Community College shortly thereafter. So I worked there and then uh, ran for them also.
Up until that point, you're on the track with Mike Boyd. You knew the national runners. How much attention and a fan of the sport had you become by say, the 72, 76 Olympics? Were you paying attention?
Oh, yes. I was a big fan. Really, I probably started really getting more into running after I graduated from UPJ. I think while I was in Pittsburgh, I became much more aware of the community, of who the top runners were, and trained much better. Did some phenomenal training with Malcolm East. We go out to North Park and it was a loop around it. It was asphalt, but it was rolling. Went out there one day and I averaged 2:10 half miles, 8 of them. And I'm like, of course, now Malcolm's starting to worry because I'm running next to him. And he was not used to that. But yeah, I really started getting into it big time.
And how was the racing? Were you running individually away from Allegheny Nike, or was that all of it? I saw a picture somewhere. I'm trying to remember who was in it. I think it was maybe Paul Talkington, Kim Burke, Carl Hatfield, you. Is a top 5 picture at one race. It didn't look like anybody had any uniforms on.
That must have been before I started running for Allegheny Nike because I wore their stuff because I had tons of it, right? Even when I stopped running for them, I wore their tops because they were really good. So that had to be before I joined them. Paul Talkington, I think he was the guy out at Malone, Ohio.
Yeah.
My senior year, he had just broken the 5-mile course record. And then the open race came. Mark Hunter was leading the race and had a pretty good lead. And I was sitting back in like third or fourth, and I was in a fog. And this runner from, I think if I can think of his name. Anyway, pulls up next to me and says, "Hey, Steve, come on, let's go." And it's like I woke up and we actually ran Mark Hunter down. He ended up the guy that helped me dropped off, ran Mark Hunter down, and I outkicked him in the last quarter mile and broke Talkington's record by 4 seconds.
Awesome. Very cool race. Yeah. Did you run in the race that used to give out the diamond rings?
No, when I lived in Hawaii while I was in the military, they had a run for diamonds race, and I won that a couple times. But no, I didn't run on the main one in that race.
All right. So how did you go from this academic career and get into the military?
While I was director of safety and security at Allegheny Community College, Neil Cohen was a problem because Neil Cohen thought he could do whatever he wanted. And my boss did not like Neil Cohen. Neil always liked to park his car in a no parking area. And as soon as I'd walk in the door in the morning, I wouldn't even have a cup of coffee. My boss would get up there and get Cohen to move his car. So I'm like, all right. So I go, Neil, please move your car. I'm not moving my car. If you don't move your car, he's going to have me get it towed. You better not. I'm not moving it. And so I get caught between that and my boss. Consequently, my boss tells me later on, he goes, "We have a conflict of interest and we're not going to renew your contract next year."
Oh,
So I'm like, okay, been fired. Got it. I took some bad advice from Neil Cohen, but I was young. I didn't really understand. I was only like 25 years old and I'm a director of safety and security. I was just not savvy enough to do that yet. I was good friends with the director of safety and security at Heinz International because he was in my master's class. I went to him and said, I need your advice. I need to go from here. What do you recommend? He goes, you need to go become a cop, and you need to do that for about 3 years and then come back into this world and you'll make a lot of money. I'm like, got it. I figured out, I packed up, I moved back to my mom's place in Claymont, Delaware. I go in and take the test for the police officer, but I realized I'm in the wrong business here. I got to do something else. At that point in time, I went out to all of the services and applied for officer training, right? Took the test, took the physicals, everything. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, did them all. I'm getting called back in to say, the Air Force said, yeah, we'll take you, but you got to become a pilot. Well, I'm 26 years old. I got a master's degree in administration of justice. And I'm like, I will be a pilot. I'd like to be in your Office of Special Investigations. I wouldn't mind even being on your police force. Oh, no problem. If you become a pilot first, you can then apply to transfer. Okay. I was born yesterday, but not last night. Okay. No, I'm not going for that. So then the Army says, hey, congratulations, you're in. I said, okay, but what skill level am I going to be able to? I'm going to be in your security force. No, you can't do that. You have to go to OCS. And then depending on how high you finish in your class and whatever jobs are available, you get to pick. So if you finish number one, you can pick first. If there's a security position in that list, you get it. And I go, I'm not driving tanks. I'm not going to be an infantryman. No, sorry. The Marine Corps, same thing. You got to become a pilot. If you change your mind, let us. If I go to the Navy says, we have a intelligence. That's what I want to apply for. Oh, no, you don't want to do that. You want to be a pilot. Because if you go through this intelligence thing, we have to do all the security background work. You got to fill out all this paperwork. It'll take time. I said, I'm working I'm in the academy. I have time. So that's the course I took. It looked like I was going to be accepted. And the phone rings. The captain of the recruiting command calls me and says, I need you to come in. Okay. So I go in the next day and he says, look at this. On the paperwork, it asked you if you have ever tried marijuana. And I did. When I was in college, I tried it. I didn't smoke it a lot, maybe once or twice, but that was it. So I acknowledged it and I put the approximate dates as they said and how many times. And the captain looks at me and says, I can't believe you confessed. That's going to knock you out of the competition. I said, if it does, it does. But I'm not going into a government position with a lie. I'm not doing it because sooner or later, that's going to come back and backfire on me. He goes, I'm going to have to go now to DC, call them and see if we can get an exemption for you. I said, okay. So a couple of weeks go by and he finally calls you back and says, we got an exemption. Right decision.
What had you been doing for running up to getting into the Navy?
Oh, I was still racing a lot, just going from race to race. I had moved back to Delaware, so I wasn't really running for Allegheny Community College anymore and just off of my own, winning a lot of local races.
What was the number of entrants? And these are all road. Was there any track stuff?
No, at the time it was all road racing. Yeah, it varied, right?
Prizes and prize money?
At that point in time, no, I was just collecting trophies.
Wow. Okay. So what happened in the Navy? When did you get connected to running with the Navy?
Went into the Navy. My first duty station was Fighter Squadron 14 out of Oceania, Virginia. So I was still doing local races when I could. I found out that there was a military race, the all Navy race. And if you qualified, you could go to the all service team and run international races. So I won the Navy race. They brought me on to the all military race. It was called CISM, Cross Country International. And so I'm off, went to foreign countries and competed cross country against a lot of Olympians, because a lot of the foreign countries put their athletes into the military, their Olympians, so they could feed them. And that was their job. So you go to some of these races and you'd run 450, 445 pace per mile and get nailed. Maybe you're in the top 20. I enjoyed that. And then the track season came and I did track also, but I couldn't go to the camps because as an officer, if you tried to do that, you weren't going to get promoted. You were going to get pushed out. So I would just go for a couple of days to do the race and come back. And
So you had to train yourself, no coaching.
correct.
Did they have good equipment? They have good shoes and stuff, or was that on you?
I bought my own shoes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
So
I
yeah,
subsidized it.
there was a guy in cross country, Stackow. He won the PIAA cross country maybe in 74. He ran for the Army for 20 years. That's not a name you came across.
No, well, I probably did run against them, but nobody from the Army ever beat me in the all service team. There was a Navy guy, was it phenomenal? And I'm trying to think of his name. Boy, I'm losing all these names. But at any rate, I could never beat this guy. I was always second or third on the team. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
You- You've been competing most of your life, and let's just jump to that. How did you come to the point that says, I'm not going to compete anymore? How was that psychologically and physically? What happened?
I was still racing hard in my mid 40s. And then I think the cumulative effect had started to catch up to me. When I was about 46, 47, I was stationed in Jacksonville or still in the Navy. And I go out for my runs and I'd start running some intervals or threw some surges in my distance. And I started tearing my calf muscle over and over. I tear it. I take 2 months off to recover, try to strengthen it, go out. I get about 6 weeks into my training, start really hitting it hard, and I tear it again. I finally realized I got to get some help here. So I went to some massage therapists. I went to some medical treatments, physical therapists, and my calf muscles had calcified to the point where a guy that weighed about 175 could stand on my calf muscle and it wouldn't move.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was slowly calcifying to death. I'm pretty sure. So I decided stop running. I got some intensive treatments, the elbow into the calf, the heated,
Oh, so those are so pleasant.
and I went through that for, I'll bet you, probably a year, maybe year and a half. And I stopped running. And slowly over time, my calves have recovered.
How'd you deal with that psychologically then? The end of it.
Oh, it was tough. I had to replace it with something. So I replaced it with lifting weights, doing push-ups, any type of something to fatigue me. And I started refereeing soccer so I could run up and down the soccer field. So that didn't bother me. It was the prolonged distance. So I could sprint. And I did that. Of course, I was into coaching. I was still trying to get some running in there, right? Running with the athletes. But I finally came to the conclusion that at about 47, I can't race anymore. For being 68 years old, I feel pretty damn good.
What about your coaching style as terms of personality? You're a fierce competitor. You learned a lot of lessons along the way. How did you treat athletes? How did you treat them as different people than you?
I was probably intense for a number of years. If I saw a boy or a girl with some talent, then I would try to guide them on the path to become better. But sometimes you can't guide some people that don't want to be champions. So you see talent and you have a cognitive dissonance that says, I need to make them do this and this. And so I would get angry when they wouldn't do this and this because you got the talent. You could be the champion. But if it's not in the heart, it's not there. And I should have known that from the guys that came to UPJ. We recruited a lot of really good guys. They all fell by the wayside. So it took a couple of years for me to step back. My daughter, by the way, was on the team and tried hard not to coach her. I have a really good friend, Dale Bateman, who went to the Naval Academy. He held the Naval Academy half mile record at 146 for 20 years. I was coaching with him. So he would help. He was very laid back, and I was just the opposite. I was tense. I was fire. Come on, get on the track. Let's go. We're doing this. And I get on there and say, come on, you can run a 70-second quarter. I'll pace you through them. And I would do that for years. I finally realized that you have to get the combination, talent and the heart, and then you focus on them. But you can't be that intense. You got to be more laid back like Tom Kelly was. Okay. I coached for 22 years. My last 2 years of coaching, I regained that knowledge and said, okay, we're not fierce. I try to incentivize more than, come on, get on the line and go, right? Honey attracts better than sour grapes. But it took a while for me to get that lesson.
Looking back, you went through this great running boom. Were you aware of the world changing as you were having success, enjoying the road racing, winning trophies, able to compete with the Navy, and then a long coaching career? What do you think about the changes in the sport, let alone the changes in the state and affirmative action, all those things that affected you personally in such significant ways? What about the changing in the sport?
It amazes me today to watch some of these 5,000-meter runners averaging, 407, 408 per mile. I have no clue how they can do that because in my day, that was unheard of. Steve Fontaine was the big freaking hero, right? And there's a ton of guys running much faster than that now. So I think the science has gotten better, right? So now you have to be on a regular diet. You have to do certain things. You got to make sure you take the stretching time. You got to get into the weight room to strengthen certain muscle groups so you can get to that level. And I think the hardware has gotten much better. I think the shoes are phenomenally better. I think there's smarter people out there to treat injuries than there used to be. Because you'd go to the doctor back then and they go, oh, take a month off to be okay. No, you don't understand. I want to be ready for this race here. What can you do for me? That mentality wasn't there, and it is now. I think the technology and the science has advanced tremendously. And the change in women's sports, the women are running so much faster now. And we knew that was going to come eventually, right? Because physically, they're more apt to run faster than men by their physical proposition. And it's starting to show. The female running, my daughter, I was shocked. My daughter she wins the cross country race in high school and she finishes second in the mile, breaking 5 minutes. And I'm like, holy shit. And she's running like a 2:14 half. Holy smokes. It's just incredible to me today to watch.
Well,
21 years in the military will settle you down and
right.
change some of your perspectives. I think I was always fairly disciplined about the sport, and I still am. And I still try to get out every day. I'm going to try to get back into some running, but obviously not the heavy duty stuff, just to keep the cardiovascular system working right.
Yeah. Thanks for all your time, Steve. It's been great to catch up and great to talk with you. We've not been on each other's radar, so hearing your story, it's almost all news to me. It was really fun to learn all that about you today.
Thanks, Matt, for interviewing me. Great talking to you.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.